3. I want to tell you in a minute about Breton law, which we learned about in Ireland. But Dave, I think you're next up in the stack.
I want to hammer through what Julie just said about the principle, the idea of land ownership, with two things. When I was going through the land transfers for the Runnymede land that got evicted from, when it was sold to the East India Corporation in the middle of the 1800s by a rather dodgy Victorian property consortium, and all these records are in the British Library now. You go through pages of them checking out who's got rights to different bits of the land and whether that allows us to do so and so and what have you, and whether there were copy holders on the land, and can we get so and so, you know, drunk for a dinner so that he will say no there aren't, or so on. And then when you look at the land transfers happening on the same area of the land in the last century, all that has gone. Okay, so this notion of absolute ownership of land, it's what you don't have absolute ownership of your toothbrush. You can't use it as to gouge people's eyes out. And the second point is a landowner, a guy who I've known since I was a kid, and he now owns 100 and something semi-detached houses for starters. And what he said to me was, what I don't get, Dave, is why people don't understand that the land was taken off them by force in the first place. Right on. Some capitalists do understand this.
Like the Diggers song, you know, by theft and murder they took the land. I think there's a couple of little stories there I want to tell. The first one was Breton law. When we went over to the Tara protest in Ireland, we learned there was something called the Flight of the Earls. The Earls, in about 1536, the last people who upheld and knew, an Earl comes from Jarl, which is an old Viking word for the higher up in command, the Jarls or something. The Flight of the Earls, the English had come in, I think, and you know, kicked some of them out, and they knew about Breton law, and they left and went to Brittany or, you know, somewhere further because they'd been driven out of Ireland. But Breton law basically said, you didn't have one man's complete ownership of a piece of land. You had clan or group ownership, or they didn't use the word ownership. It was kind of caretaking, shared use of, stewardship of that land that people could then use to grow food, to share. And the analogy would be that, you know, somebody couldn't, if one person's owned a bit of land, it's full of forest. Under Breton law, you would, if you wanted to chop some of that down, you'd have to go to the village elders, to the council, to the grandmothers, the grandchildren, to everyone, and say, you know, to the tribe or the clan that was on that bit of land, we want to chop some of these trees down, or we want to chop all of it down. And they would, some of them, the grandmothers would say, no, sorry, you can't, because that's our shade, our warmth, our fuel, our this, that, and the other. Whereas when the English came in and put in the English law on it, one man could own 10,000 acres of this forest, he could then say, right, I want to chop everything down, build logs for, you know, log cabins or whatever it was.
Can I take you a bit further back on that? This is from the previous Archbishop of Canterbury, Rowan Williams, when he came and talked to the Jubilee Debt Campaign a couple of years ago. And he took us through land rights in Leviticus, and again, total ownership of the land by a single person. It was a group ownership and no one person. And basically, if you really believe in your Bible and you're literal about your Bible, all this one person land ownership, no.
Well, that's what was brilliant. We got evicted. These are fascinating. But the School of Ideas eviction, same night as the St Paul's eviction. So I had to rush down there to go and deal with that. And outside, basically, there was this African woman, and, you know, biblical, and she was ranting at the police because it had just been the Queen's Jubilee. And she said, I'll tell you about Jubilee, let me tell you about Jubilee. The original meaning of Jubilee in the Bible is every 50 years there is a big sharing out of land and wealth and possessions. And basically the biblical thing had been laid down that if you allow massive inequality to grow between the richest and the poorest, every few hundred years or whatever, you will get a mass bloodbath of everyone fighting each other, probably, because there is such a difference between the 1% and the vast majority of the 99%. So every 50 years in the biblical tradition, they would share out land and possessions and things, so it equalised it a bit more. And she was going, this Jubilee, the Queen, She claims to own a sixth of the world's surface or whatever. I don't see no sharing out going on, basically. I'll tell you about Jubilee. This is the real meaning of Jubilee, you know. So we need to learn from the history and the herstory and the ourstory.
I wonder when that tradition process actually stopped. I mean, obviously it's biblical. I wonder when...
The first written record is 1750 BC. King Hammurabi of the Babylonians at the start of his reign had a jubilee, a debt jubilee, and debt is on land, so debt, land, jubilee, they're very intimately connected. And the Jews learned from this, and they copied the Babylonians. They were by the Babylonians for a few hundred years, and they learned some good stuff.
You get
as well as bad
Well, it
stuff.
sounds
Jubilee.
like they learnt the bad stuff, sorry.
And that too, yeah. The Jubilee Debt Campaign, which is now a modern ripple of that, you know, forgive the debt and make poverty history and all that. The Jewish people actually copied a lot of what we see as the Bible, like 60-70% of it is actually copied from the Enam Elish and the old cylinder scrolls of the Sumerians, because when they were captured and taken to Babylon, they were there in captivity for whatever is 100 years or more, and they copied a lot of those very ancient stories, and a lot of the book of Genesis is actually very, very close to all the Sumerian cylinder scrolls, and we need to learn these things, the roots of where our history and our knowledge come from, so as not to repeat the mistakes of the past, and learn from the good points, like, you know, Jubilee.
In terms of the solutions, I think keep reoccurring. So, like a practical thing as well about land and sharing the wealth is land value tax. So that was first proposed back by an American economist.
George, I mean, there's hints of it there in Adam Smith. He says the best form of tax is tax on land, but Georgius, he wrote to.
Yeah, so it's about saying that actually you will always get wealth accumulation if you keep all the value of the land. And what you should do is, if you get some land and you live in a community and it gets improved because there's investment in transport or there's investment in the infrastructure, and you can see that. I live in Clapham, for example, and when I first moved to Clapham was quite a poor area. Now Clapham has got, lovely parks, it's got lots of bars, it's like a very desirable, so-called desirable area, and yet the wealth accumulation has just gone to the property holders. So he critiqued this idea, and he said actually that is community wealth that should be made by other people investing in it, and it should be shared amongst the community. So you shouldn't actually accumulate all that property wealth. That should be shared, which is the idea of land value tax. You can see that more practically maybe in this new housing scheme, which I think is quite inspiring in East London, where it's a development where people will only own the price of the bricks and mortar, which means that that's quite affordable. It's £100,000, £200,000 to buy a flat, but then they will pay rent on the ownership of the land to the trust, and then that gets invested in the community. And I think that's a really important. As a solution, because it means that you don't benefit from the practical capital accumulation. It means that housing stays affordable. It means the value stays in the community. It would just solve so many problems.
We need solutions.
You were asking for solutions, and this is one of them. It's not the single silver bullet, but it's about the shiniest one. And it's people all around. Like, there are two former governors of the Bank of England. One of them said to me, I think it's a no-brainer, but the politicians don't like it because of the people it offends. You've got a former head of the CBI saying it. You've got a lot of good economists saying it. You've even got Alistair Darling, the last Labour Chancellor, was quietly persuaded of this, some kind of tax on land so that the value is captured by the community, not by individuals who just sit out there. I know some guys buying land in the Philippines, and they say, hey, we're land developers. And I say, how are you developing the land? How are you going to make profit on it? Oh, well, we're going to wait for the government to build roads, and then we'll sell it. That is the whole psychology of an awful lot of the
Dear
wealth
God.
in this country.
We had a guy come to Parliament Square, the Democracy Village, when we were occupying, from the Labour Land Value Tax Group, and told us all about that. And everything. It's one of the little stories I want to get is we occupied a mansion down in Thames Ditton for my 40th birthday party because I didn't have any money as usual, but I thought, I'm good at getting big buildings, so I just got a big
You went.
mansion anyway, went posh for it, yeah. And basically, we read in the court papers. You get fascinating history come out sometimes. So the court papers and a bit of history. It turned out it used to be the house of some like Attorney General from the legal Attorney General from 1712 to 1736, and he actually wrote a lot of the land laws that created more and more of this one-man English law that can control a lot of the area and a lot of the things and stuff like that. It was like, how funny that 250 years later his house gets squatted and we have a birthday party and we have for me 40th. All of these protests that we see around the walls, every time we've occupied a bit of land, incredible knowledge and history comes out of the land, the people, the history, like Crystal Palace, when Susanna is a lot of these camps. I call her tribal grandmother, but she, the knowledge in Crystal Palace, that what used to be there is phenomenal, and all these different stories people would come out and tell you, and it's very important to link up the knowledge of the land.
This is one reason why we mustn't let the government privatise the land registry at the moment, because it's not that great at the moment. If it gets privatised, it's going to become even less great, and ordinary people will have less access at any reasonable tolerable price to the records there. And those records need to be...
That means if it's privatised, though, you can't just pay $2.50 to find out no more.
That's what they're going to extract value from as many people as they can to find out about these things. And how this ties with land value tax is that a lot of the land in this country isn't registered at the moment. So if we create a land value tax of some sort, that will force the registration of the whole of the land, because I've certainly come across land cons in my lifetime where people have said they own land and they were charging people money or rent for that, and they didn't. It's about
by theft and murder they took the land. This is Phoenix. We're at the Resistance exhibition, just talking through some of the fascinating history that the exhibition's bringing up. I'm going to pause this one here for now, but we've been with Dave and Julie and Shona and Phoenix, and Dave and Julie have done a lot of stuff with Occupy and Occupy Economics Working Group and the New Putney debates, and we should hear more of that in a bit.
By one Phoenix. Not a little.
Keep networking. All right, cool.